You probably heard that the Republicans in the House are trying to put together, at Donald Trump's insistence, one big, beautiful bill.
The one big, beautiful bill. I think we're going to get everything we want.
Well, let me tell you, this bill is a dog. I have been doing this for a while as governor and senator. I don't think I've seen a worse piece of policy in all my time in government. And it's going to affect each and every American, no matter where they live. And I think overwhelmingly in a negative way. So let's get into it. Let's talk about taxes. You know, this bill actually extends and expands some of the worst parts of the original Trump tax cuts. And it also, for those who care about the deficit, through a series of manipulations, pick your number, adds 4, 5, 6, 7 trillion to the deficit, depending on analysis. Then in terms of taxes itself, and this is kind of makes you scratch your head, for folks who are making minimum wage, literally the folks who sometimes have to work 2 jobs just to get by, it actually raises their taxes 53%, raise their taxes by about half if you're making minimum wage. If you're at the other end of the spectrum and you're part of the top 1/10 of 1%, you're going to see a tax cut pretty much minimum of about $188,000. Now listen, I think in America, if you succeed, that's great. You ought to get well compensated. But it also means that our tax system is based on some notion of progressivity. And if you do better, you ought to be able to kick in a little bit more. This bill turns that whole notion and turns it on its head. Basically says, let's go back to the working poor in virtually every category. They're going to see their total taxes overall go up. At the very top, and I've been blessed to do well, but I think I ought to be paying my fair share just as everybody else. You're going to see incredible tax cuts. That's not fair. It's not right. It's not the kind of opportunity-based system in America that, that we all have a responsibility to each other. And this is at the core of this whole episode. Second, what's this bill going to do to the social safety net? Increasingly around America, upwards of 40, 50, 60% of our kids are on Medicaid. And that's not just in urban communities, that's rural, that's suburban, that's everywhere. This bill will kick about 13 million Americans off of Medicaid. A lot of those are going to be kids. Here in Virginia, it's going to cut about 250,000 off of Medicaid. What does this mean in terms of effect? Let me just talk about in Virginia. Rural hospitals, where it's already really hard to find a hospital that's actually willing to have an OBGYN facility to deliver babies. Those remaining hospitals that have that in rural Virginia, most of them will have to close their doors or cut out that service. In a place like Virginia, should you really have to travel 100, 200 miles to deliver a baby in 2025 in America? That doesn't make sense, but that will be the effect of these cuts to Medicaid. And if you go beyond Medicaid, I think most Americans think the kids that go to school ought to not go to school hungry. This has been widely supported by Republicans and Democrats for years, until now. So this program, which cuts what we call up here the SNAP program, but at the end of the day actually means how do kids get free or reduced breakfasts or lunches at school, it cuts it back dramatically. Do we all really want our kids with all the stresses on them going to school hungry? This is the kind of mean-spiritedness that is laced throughout this bill. Another thing in this bill, it further traumatizes our federal workforce. We got a lot of federal workers, not just in Virginia, but around the country. They've already gone through hell in the first few months of this administration. This, in certain areas, will actually cut their retirement and their willingness to kind of be a federal worker. Let me also talk about what this bill could have been. Everywhere I go, I hear about the cost of childcare. We could have actually put in a permanent child tax credit in this bill. There's a little sliver, but something that would have been permanent. You're making tax cuts permanent. Why don't you make child tax credit permanent? No, didn't do that. Didn't give any kind of creative ways to help support daycare centers and child care centers with creative incentive tax policies. So for kids, not too much. What about affordable housing? There's a little piece in here for affordable housing, but there's no expansion of affordable housing. We need more housing supply. We got plenty of demand in our country. We just don't have enough supply. There's nothing creative in this bill about housing. We could have done better. We could have found ways to incent, houses of worship around the country to build affordable housing units with carrots and sticks to local zoning to try to move those processes along. We could have found ways to recognize as well that we've got to think creatively about housing. I've got a couple communities in Virginia that are, dramatically lowering sewer connect fees and permitting fees because they've found a revenue source. We could have used a revenue source in this bill. Nope, didn't do it. Didn't do it. So what do we got? We got a bill that will add more money to the debt, which our kids and grandkids will have to pay, which will give tax breaks to the folks at the very top, take folks who are making minimum wage and basically increase their taxes 53%. It'll take the programs, particularly around healthcare and feeding of kids, and cut them in a draconian way. And at the end of the day, this kind of massive, big bill, what an opportunity to say, you know what, we're going to put people from both sides, both parties into the room and figure out how we can actually take on affordable housing, childcare, actually beef up research rather than cut it down. No, instead, we've got the epitome of a lot of what this administration's been about. Self-serving, kind of mean, not thinking about our obligations that we all have to each other. Now, if this bill gets to the Senate, we're going to do all we can to stop it, to fight it. End of the day, though, that's going to take us convincing some of our Republican friends in the Senate not to do this kind of awful policy. It's also going to require each and every one of us to continue to stand up, speak out, have those uncomfortable conversations. We all got family members and friends or folks we work with who voted for President Trump or voted for Republican members of the Congress. You got to ask them, is this really the kind of America going forward that they wanted to hire? I don't think so. I think we're a better country. I think the American people are not this mean-spirited. But this is a fight that we all have to engage in. Together, we can turn this around.